everyone, welcome back. Today we are going to embrace soup season and make my all-time favorite soup. It's up there in my top 5, I think, but that is debatable. I often say everything is my favorite, but this is definitely way up there. And we're gonna make Butternut Bisque. This is a 5-ingredient super easy soup, and it's creamy, it is smooth, it is velvety, and it's a wonderful like fall winter soup for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere. So we're gonna dive right in and cut up this butternut. All we're going to need today is 1 butternut squash, some coconut oil. You could use a different oil of choice if you would like. A yellow onion, at least this big. It's not that big actually. This is like a small to medium. Sometimes I would get a little bigger, but I don't want to overpower it. So butternut, oil of your choice. I like coconut oil, but olive oil would be my backup. A yellow onion, some salt, black pepper, coconut milk, full fat, and filtered water. And the equipment we'll use is a veggie peeler and a blender. I like using a high-speed blender, but any blender will work because the soup will be so soft to blend and get nice and smooth. And a pot for cooking. So we're gonna dive right in. So the first thing we're gonna do is check out our butternut squash, and I'm actually gonna take it to the sink really quick, wash off any dirt. Even though I'm gonna peel it, it'll just be easier and it won't get dirt all over my cutting board. And this one has a little bit of a blemish on it, but we're gonna peel that right out. So I'm gonna go wash this off and be right back. Okay, so it's okay if there's a little bit of dirt, because again, we're gonna get it off. I just didn't want dirt all over my cutting board. So I'm gonna take my knife and cut off the ends. I want to try to save as much as possible so we're not wasting too much food. It's really hard today. So cut off both of the ends, and then you can either peel it now or you can cut this, like the bulby part from this, cut it in half and peel it. I like peeling it when it's all together. It's going to be easier because this part that is round at the bottom is a little bit more difficult to peel. Some people just use a knife to cut off the skin, and that is fine too. We're gonna probably have some peel going a little bit of everywhere. A little bit of. If you ever have any like funky spots, you can just like take a knife, just carefully, and get it off with a knife. Okay. So once your butternut squash is all peeled, we're going to then cut right, it's not in half. See how like I kind of cut this rounder part off of the cylinder. So we're gonna separate that. This part has no seeds inside of it, so we're gonna set that aside and we're gonna get the seeds out. Butternut squash seeds are really, really good to clean up and roast. If you'd like, you can toss them with a little bit of oil and salt. But when I'm doing a lot and I have a lot of food prep going on, I often end up just composting them. If you do end up roasting them, you can sprinkle them on top of your soup later as a little garnish. It's really fun. Or just eat them as snacks. I just use a regular tablespoon to scoop these out. And not only am I getting the seeds, but I'm getting a little bit of the inner skin that's softer. And again, I'm gonna compost these today, but whatever you would like to do. That is the hardest part of making butternut bisque, is peeling and taking the seeds out. And then I'm just gonna, I like to turn this on its side, cut it into these like rings. Basically now we're just going to cube it. This would be like bite-sized cubes. It doesn't matter though what size or what shape they are, because we are going to be blending it into a very smooth pureed soup at the end. So they don't need to hold their form at all. So for this part, I like to cut it down in strips. And then I'll stack. You can either do one at a time, whatever's more comfortable for you. It's a little harder to do it that long. Oh, hello. Boom. And I can just do one at a time if you prefer. So the basic premise for this soup, you can really use any vegetable that you want and turn this into a creamy soup. So I like, this recipe is actually the same, almost the same as the cream of cauliflower soup that I have in my Healing Tonics Juices and Smoothies cookbook. But instead of cauliflower, we're using butternut squash. Otherwise, it's exactly the same recipe. So we can open that up and see my exact measurements. And you can use this for potato and add leek and do a potato leek soup. And you can really play around with different veggies. Tomato basil bisque is another great one. You can just replace this with tomatoes, add some basil, and otherwise it's literally exactly the same, just like the butternut squash content, swap for potatoes or tomatoes and whatever your heart desires. Once we have our butternut all peeled, seeds taken out and cubed up, we're just gonna set it aside because we're gonna cut up our onion next. We always start with sauteing our onion. I do not add garlic to this soup most of the time, but if you would like to, you are welcome to. It would be delicious. I keep this one really, really simple. Okay, so the onion, we're just gonna peel this guy right up, dice it down. Again, it doesn't even need to be diced. It can be whatever because we're going to be blending into a pureed soup at the end. Onion peels if you want, if you know that you have a big Thanksgiving dinner coming up, or you know it's soup season and you want to be making a lot of veggie stock, you could be popping these onion peels into a bag and storing that in your freezer or some kind of container. Bags are nice because you can kind of shove them around wherever they'll fit. And you can put your carrot peels, your celery butts, your onion peels, anything like that into that bag. And when it comes time to make your veggie stock, you'll be ready to go. I'm not even gonna do I'm doing a really rough slice because all we're gonna be doing is sauteing this and then they'll get blended up in the end to be a perfectly smooth soup. All right, great. Okay, so once everything is prepped and ready, we are going to take our oil, and I have coconut oil that in this temperature, it's colder now up in Vermont, so it's hardened a little bit. And we're going to pop this in our pot. Turn our stovetop on. We're gonna start on a higher heat to get things going, and we'll move it down as it gets heated up. We'll wait till wait till our oil is melted. If you are using olive oil, you could throw in the onions right away, or you could wait until it's a little bit heated up. You can add the onion in. And right after the onion is added in, we're gonna add our salt. So I did 3 tablespoons of oil. You could use a little less if you prefer. And then 1.5 teaspoons of salt. If you prefer at the end, you're always welcome to add more salt. I always start with less and you can add more later. 1/2 teaspoon or a nice hefty pinch or so of black pepper. Black pepper can be optional if you prefer. And we're just gonna let these saute down. We want them to get a little translucent, maybe a little slightly golden. And I got some of the green onion that was in the center of this one, and that's totally fine. It's completely edible. And that will just take a few minutes. Yum, holy yum. So once the onions are almost done, we can turn the heat down to a medium heat. And if you were interested in adding in garlic to this soup, you could add it in just a few seconds. Once the onions are basically done is when I add the garlic, because the garlic cooks a lot faster and we don't want it to burn. And then we can grab our butternut and we can add that right into the pot. I like to give this a little stir. And then we're going to add 1 cup of either water, filtered water, or vegetable stock. We do not want to be covering the butternut or whatever vegetable you're deciding to use. You want to like leave a little bit, like about 1 inch below that butternut line. You can start to see the water. And we're gonna put the lid on it, let this cook until the butternut is almost completely soft or completely soft. And then we'll add in our final steps before we whip it up. Sorry, my arm was in the way. All right, so our butternut is softening up really nicely. You can check it with a fork if you'd like, or if your little wooden spatula or whatever you're using goes through it, but you can tell it's like already like cooking down really soft. So the next step, we're gonna add coconut milk. If you can't do coconut, you could add almond milk or any milk of choice. I like to use full fat coconut milk, like straight from a can, and I'm adding a cup to start. I don't want it too thin, so I don't like, see how it's like just barely covered? You can still see the butternut. That's perfect. And I'm just gonna triple check these with a fork before we blend it up. All right, so I like to find like a bigger piece. And you can definitely get through it with a fork, but it's still slightly tough. So we're gonna let it cook for just a few more minutes, maybe 5 minutes. Let it get really, really soft, and then we'll be good to blend it. And then we can just see if we need to adjust the salt or seasonings at all. Again, if you wanted to add herbs like sage, thyme, that would all be really delicious. So we're just gonna transfer this over and get it into our Vitamix. You can use any blender for this. You do not need to use a high-speed blender. You could use a NutriBullet. You can really use anything that will whip it up. You could also use an immersion blender and just do right in the pot. So we're gonna blend this right up. Let's see, where am I? Is it on? So we've got our butternut bisque blended and finished, and this is really a great base recipe. If you wanted, this would be really great with some curry spices. You could just use straight up curry powder. You could add a little turmeric, cumin, coriander. You can add herbs. I think I mentioned earlier, you can add garlic. And you can top this if you'd like. You can top it with a little swirl of cashew cheese, or what else? The pumpkin seeds or butternut squash roasted seeds. Anything you want to do. But this is just a really awesome base. And I'm just gonna triple check before I take it out of the blender that it doesn't need any more salt. It is very, very hot. I think that's a perfect amount of salt. And then folks can add a little bit more if they want, because not everybody likes as much salt as others. And I think this is the perfect consistency. So this recipe made about 8 cups. So that's like 4 servings if you were to have 2 cups each for like 4 people, or a little bit smaller servings for a few more people. And you can see this is nice and thick. If you wanted to make it a little bit thinner, you could add a little more coconut milk, filtered water, or veggie stock. And one of my favorite things ever to do with our creamy soups at Superfresh is to make a sandwich and dip a sandwich right inside, like our pesto melt or a grilled cheese. Quesadillas are great dipped in them. Literally anything dipped in a creamy soup is amazing. I hope you love this soup as much as I do, and I would love to hear from you how you like playing with it. If you like different toppings or adding different herbs, different spices, I would love to hear it in the comments below. And if you want to learn more, I have a bunch of holiday recipes in a holiday feast course. This is a great soup to make ahead, and sometimes, like if you're one person or a couple people or you just want to batch it, you can make a larger batch or the same amount and freeze some of it. It freezes really well. All you got to do is defrost, heat it up, and you'll be good to go on a rainy day when you don't feel like making much of anything.